Before the season, the conversation around the Denver Broncos was all about making the leap to become contenders after snapping a 9-year playoff drought in 2024. Much of that buzz went away after a rocky start to the season, including consecutive, last-second losses to the Indianapolis Colts and Los Angeles Chargers that dropped them to 1-2. Now, sitting at 6-2 after 5 consecutive wins following a 44-24 win over the Dallas Cowboys in Week 8, the Broncos have become impossible to ignore. From Bleacher Report, Denver is starting to look like a legitimate AFC contender. While any offensive performance against Dallas should be taken with a grain of salt, the Broncos are starting to figure out who their playmakers on offense are. That, combined with a top-5 defense, is enough to think that Denver will be a factor in the AFC the rest of the way. Defense could set NFL single-season sack record. The Broncos have a chance to break the NFL's team single-season sacks record set by the Chicago Bears in 1984 with 72.0 sacks. The Broncos have 36.0 sacks through 8 games, which would put them on track for 76.5 sacks on a 17-game schedule, one more game than the Bears had to set the record in playing on the 16-game schedule in 1984. To that end, the real team that should be considered the record holder might be the 1967 Oakland Raiders, who had 67.0 sacks in just 14 regular season games. 7 players on the Broncos currently have at least 2 sacks, led by outside linebacker and 2024 NFL Defensive Player of the Year finalist Nick Bonitto with 8.0 sacks. Offense coming to life with young talent. While the defense being great was kind of a given because they led the NFL with 63.0 sacks in 2024 and returned cornerback and NFL Defensive Player of the Year Patrick Surtain too, the real wild card in 2025 has been the team's offense, which has struggled with consistency. All of that has seemed to change over the last 2 weeks. In Week 7, the Broncos engineered one of the greatest regular season comebacks in NFL history in a 33-32 win over the New York Giants. The Broncos trailed 19-0 headed into the third quarter and 28-6 with 6 minutes left. In their 33-point fourth quarter, quarterback Bo Nix became the first quarterback in NFL history to rush for 2 touchdowns and throw for 2 touchdowns in a single quarter. NFL teams had won an incredible 1,602 straight games when leading by 18-plus points in the final 6 minutes, the 33rd team's Ari Meirov wrote on his official X account. The Giants led 26-8 with 6 minutes left, and the Broncos came back to win 33-32. Probably the most important part of the Broncos' offense that wasn't there last year, but exists this year, is a rushing attack. 1 year after having no reliable running backs, the Broncos now find themselves with 2 in veteran free agent J.K. Dobbins and rookie second-round pick R.J. Harvey. Against the Cowboys, Dobbins rushed for 111 yards on 14 carries while Harvey had 46 yards and 2 touchdowns on 7 carries. Through 8 games, Dobbins leads the Broncos with 634 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. In 2024, current Dallas Cowboys leading rusher Javonte Williams led the Broncos with 513 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns in 17 games. The Las Vegas Raiders are ramping things back up for the second half of the season following their bye week in Week 8. After the team's blowout loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, there was a lot of speculation that the Raiders would start trading away veterans to accumulate draft picks and focus on a rebuild. However, the team decided against making any significant changes. One big rumor that surfaced was that the Dallas Cowboys were interested in trading for star defensive end Maxx Crosby. He's the Raiders' most valuable asset right now, so they likely could have gotten at least 2 first-round picks if they dealt him. Las Vegas came out and made it clear that they weren't trading him, and Crosby's camp leaked out that he didn't want to get traded. Crosby is loyal to the Raiders, but some people don't think that's wise. Former MVP quarterback Cam Newton questioned why Crosby would want to stay in Las Vegas when he could join a potential playoff team like the Cowboys. But understand, even in the offseason, Maxx Crosby has made it abundantly clear that he wants to do what? Win, Newton said on ESPN's First Take. So now, he's not going to win in Vegas because now you have another situation that keeps constantly coming up. Why am I not in the playoffs? Okay. Now you have an opportunity to get traded to a team that is potentially what you are looking for. Is Crosby making a mistake being loyal to Raiders? Crosby has said in the past that he'd like to be a Raider for life. Though the team hasn't won much during his time with them, they've always taken care of him from a contractual standpoint. Owner Mark Davis loves Crosby, and it'd take a lot to convince him to approve any trade. That said, the star defensive end could apply pressure and request a trade. If that were to happen, Davis would have to at least consider his options. For now, it sounds like Crosby will stay put, but it could be an interesting offseason if the Raiders continue to play poorly this season. Cowboys not close to any deals. Even at 3-3-1, the Cowboys have been much better than anybody expected. The offense has been elite and arguably the best in the NFL. The problem for them is that the defense is a mess. They had a star pass rusher, Micah Parsons, whom they decided to trade away. Perhaps they're realizing now that keeping Parsons might have been what they needed to be contenders. The Cowboys do sound keen on trading for a pass rusher, but owner Jerry Jones doesn't seem confident that a deal will happen. There hasn't been anything close to a deal, Jones said on 105.3 The Fan. We're looking at all phases of our roster. I don't know if we will or not make a trade. I can tell you this right now, there is not a trade in my mind, the beginning and end of one as we sit here and talk that I would do. A notable NFL insider has offered up a detailed explanation for why the Dallas Cowboys making a blockbuster trade for Myles Garret in the next week is very realistic. After the Cleveland Browns gave superstar pass rusher Myles Garret a 4-year extension worth $160 million earlier this year, it seemed even more likely that the 6-time Pro Bowler would actually finish his career in Cleveland. Then Week 8 happened. On Sunday, Garret had a game of a lifetime as he posted 5 sacks against the New England Patriots. However, it meant nothing as the Browns were still blown out by a score of 32-13. Garret was seen enraged on the sidelines late in the game, and speculation grew louder that he could push for an exit like he reportedly did earlier this year. However, many around the game believe his massive contract would make a trade very difficult. But, according to ESPN NFL insider Dan Graziano, that may not necessarily be the case. He admits that trading Garret now would mean a big dead cap hit to Cleveland in the years ahead. But various teams have taken on bigger cap hits while getting nothing in return. That's a lot of dead money, but it's not even close to the record, Graziano writes. The Broncos took on about $80 million when they cut Russell Wilson last year, and they made the playoffs last season and look poised to do so again. The Buccaneers are still carrying Tom Brady's dead money, and they won their division every season. We see teams do this more and more as the salary cap continues to rise significantly each year. Cowboys could create perfect draft scenario for Browns in Myles Garret trade. Along with that, Graziano added that there are 2 other key factors in a potential trade before the November 4th NFL trade deadline. First, Garret has to want it. Considering the Browns' long-term outlook and where he would go in the deal, waiving his no-trade clause shouldn't be a big problem. But Cleveland also must get an offer that makes it worth taking on all that dead money. Well, the Cowboys are one of the few teams that can make the sort of offer the Browns would want, and that is 2 first-round picks in April, according to Graziano. After the Micah Parsons trade, they will have 2 first-rounders in 2026, and following his exit, they still have a desperate need for pass rushing help this season and beyond. Myles Garret stats: 8 games, 10 sacks, 31 tackles, 15 tackles for loss. Cleveland would be looking at the possibility of having 4 first-round selections in the 2026 draft, Graziano wrote. The Browns would be able to completely control round 1 and come out of it with whichever quarterback they wanted. The acquiring team would have to pay Garret a fairly reasonable $31.5 million in fully guaranteed money in 2026 and about $30.5 million in 2027. Based on those details, it sure seems like a blockbuster Myles Garret trade for the Dallas Cowboys is there for the taking if the star pass rusher really wants out. Especially since the Browns could have a franchise-changing draft next year from what they could get in the deal.